9 things you should never accept from anyone. Vertical bar Stoicism. Get ready, because today we're going to reveal the 9 things you should never accept from anyone, not even the closest people in your life. And no, we're not talking about awkward gifts. We're talking about emotional traps disguised as favors, opinions, and expectations that can stifle your growth and undermine your peace of mind. But don't worry, because here you'll not only learn how to recognize these traps, but also how to say no firmly and confidently. And to top it all off, at the end of this video, I'll tell you what is the most harmful thing you should never accept. And better yet, how to turn it into a real boost for your growth. Let's go. The hidden weight of favors with ulterior motives. Favors are a double-edged sword. At first glance, they may seem like genuine acts of kindness, but that's not always the case. Imagine someone who helps you frequently, always at your disposal, but you have a gut feeling that something is off. This could be the start of an uncomfortable situation, where a simple favor turns into an emotional debt. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic philosopher, always warned about the dangers of readily accepting everything that comes from outside, especially when it involves ulterior motives. Understanding these nuances is essential for maintaining peace of mind. Often the motivation behind these favors is far from altruistic. The person may be seeking something in return: control, recognition, or even a future advantage. Favors with ulterior motives have the power to trap us in a web of unspoken obligations. If we're not careful, we can fall into the trap of feeling guilty or even manipulated by those who use generosity as a bargaining chip. Self-preservation here is key, and Stoicism teaches us to discern when a favor is a trap. To avoid these invisible ties, it's crucial to develop an internal filter. Having the confidence to question what's behind a favor is liberating. A good practical example would be an offer to help at work that seems friendly, but over time reveals itself as a way to gain power or influence over your decisions. When you notice this, you must learn to set healthy boundaries, politely refusing the favor if you feel there's a price to be paid. Self-preservation must always come first. Remember, your peace of mind is non-negotiable. This is where the wisdom of Seneca comes in, reminding us that genuine favors expect nothing in return. Therefore, it's important to learn how to identify gestures that truly come from good intentions and not from hidden ulterior motives. And if necessary, assertively refuse without guilt, knowing that this is part of your personal growth. Another example is toxic relationships. In these, favors with ulterior motives are common, creating an emotional web that can be hard to escape. If you've ever found yourself saying, "I owe him that," without even knowing why, you've probably been a victim of this dynamic. Personal control and inner wisdom are the keys to dealing with these situations, so we don't carry guilt that doesn't belong to us. And whenever doubt arises about a favor, the reflection proposed by the Stoics is helpful. Does this favor really bring something positive to me, or am I putting myself in a vulnerable position? By questioning these gestures, you'll be closer to a state of peace of mind and emotional freedom. And speaking of freedom, there's something even subtler that deserves our attention: the dangerous illusion of external validation. We live in a world where the search for external validation has become almost a natural reflex. Social media reinforces this need with likes, comments, and numbers that supposedly measure our worth. However, relying on this approval is like building a house on sand. As Epictetus said, it's not the things that upset us, but the opinions we have about them. True value lies in accepting who we are without the constant need for applause from those around us. Trusting your own vision of success is liberating. When we seek external validation, we're giving others the power to control our emotions. Think about how many times you felt bad because you didn't get the response or recognition you expected. This vicious cycle erodes your self-confidence and makes you forget that the only recognition that truly matters is your own. For those who fall into this trap, it's essential to remember what Marcus Aurelius teaches us. Other people's opinions don't define who we are. The key to emotional well-being is freeing yourself from this endless search. A practical example of this is the workplace, where many feel pressured to seek constant approval from colleagues and superiors. While feedback is important for growth, living in the expectation of being praised for everything can create a sense of emptiness. The best path is to focus on personal development, on internal goals, and not rely on validation that can be inconsistent. In the end, your progress can only be measured by you. Learn to value your achievements without needing someone else to legitimize them. Unfair comparison, so common on social media, is another byproduct of this search for external validation. Seeing other people's lives always through a filter can make us feel like we're falling behind. However, true peace of mind comes when we understand that each journey is unique. Self-acceptance must be the foundation of our motivation, not the expectations of others. Recognizing our own achievements, even small ones, keeps us on the right path. As Seneca said, we must live for ourselves, not for others. The pressure of external validation isn't limited to work or social media. It's also present in relationships. Often we constantly seek the approval of our partners or friends to feel validated. This can create emotional dependence that drains our energy. To cultivate healthy relationships, it's crucial to set clear boundaries and have self-confidence. That way, we build stronger bonds based on mutual respect, not on a relentless search for recognition. And at the end of the day, what remains is the sense of emotional freedom when we stop seeking this external validation. When we accept that true happiness comes from within, we make room for personal growth and the peace we so desire. And of course, this process of letting go of validation leads to another important reflection about something even more harmful: unfair comparisons. The invisible weight of unfair comparisons. Comparison is one of the most subtle and insidious traps that exist. Sometimes, without realizing it, we put ourselves in an endless race, always looking sideways, trying to measure our success against others. But this race only brings frustration. Epictetus taught us that we should focus on what is under our control, and the lives of others with their achievements and challenges are definitely not. Each person follows a different pace, and unfair comparison only robs us of peace of mind and the pleasure of living our own path. By falling into the trap of comparisons, we forget that everyone's journey is unique. Imagine comparing your early stages with someone else's peak. That would be like comparing a newborn to an adult, expecting both to have the same skills. The truth is, everyone is at a different stage with their own struggles and victories. Instead of looking at others, we should focus on our personal progress. As Epictetus reminds us, what matters is who we are today compared to who we were yesterday. The professional life is one of the most fertile environments for unfair comparisons. How many times have you found yourself looking at a colleague's success, wondering why they advanced faster? But what we don't see are the challenges they faced, the sacrifices they made. Everyone has a different context. To avoid this destructive cycle, it's essential to cultivate self-acceptance and self-confidence, recognizing that our success is measured by internal standards, not by others. Having a well-calibrated internal filter is essential for maintaining peace of mind. The Stoics teach us to seek inner peace, and comparisons are a direct obstacle to this. Instead of measuring yourself against others, the real comparison should be internal. How have you dealt with challenges? How have you improved your emotional control and emotional freedom? These are the parameters that matter. Seneca reminds us that the greatest progress is the one we make within ourselves. When we focus on that, external comparisons lose their power to shake us. In the context of relationships, unfair comparisons can also creep in and cause problems. Have you ever found yourself comparing your relationship with that of a friend or family member? This can create unrealistic expectations, leading to frustration and dissatisfaction. Healthy relationships are built on authenticity and mutual respect, not on trying to match other people's standards. To avoid this mistake, it's important to work on self-preservation and develop healthy boundaries that protect us from these destructive comparisons. The lesson is clear. When we stop comparing ourselves to others, we gain emotional freedom and make room for true personal growth. The journey is about who we're becoming, not how far someone else has come. And speaking of challenges, this leads us to reflect on something even more subtle and dangerous: unsolicited opinions that often arise along the way. The trap of unsolicited opinions. Unsolicited opinions are like arrows shot without direction. Often they arrive unannounced, disguised as concern or friendly advice. The problem is that when we accept these opinions without a filter, we begin to question our own decisions, undermining our confidence. Marcus Aurelius reminds us that we should only consider what resonates with our principles, ignoring the external noise. After all, no one knows your life as well as you do. The ability to discern what is useful and what is just noise is an essential self-preservation tool. How many times have you received unsolicited advice that, instead of helping, only brought more confusion? It could be at work when someone suggests a different way of doing a task you've already mastered, or in your personal life when friends or family seem to know better what's good for you. These opinions often stem from a hidden motivation, a need for control, external validation, or even insecurity. Stoicism teaches us to separate what is truly useful from what only burdens us mentally. The next time someone offers an opinion you didn't ask for, think carefully before absorbing it. A practical example would be in the financial realm, where many people give advice on how you should invest your money. Every situation is unique, and choices should reflect your goals and personal values. Listen politely, but firmly maintain personal control over your decisions. Internal wisdom is something that is built over time, and allowing external opinions to constantly shape your choices can destabilize this process. Relationships are another fertile ground for these unsolicited opinions. Who hasn't heard something like, "If I were you, I'd do it differently"? While people may have good intentions, they don't always know what's best for you. Setting healthy boundaries is the best way to protect your peace of mind and stay focused on what really matters for your personal growth. Self-confidence and self-care go hand in hand, and learning to say thanks, but I don't need that advice right now, can be liberating. Marcus Aurelius, wise in his Stoic approach, already said that true wisdom lies within us. To achieve this, it's essential to practice mental self-care and develop a strong internal filter, one that's robust enough to block opinions that don't contribute positively. This means understanding that we're not obliged to follow what others say, even when advice comes from close people. The responsibility for our lives and decisions is exclusively ours, and accepting this is a major step toward achieving mental and emotional peace. By learning to deal with unsolicited opinions, you gain immense emotional freedom. After all, your life is yours to live, and you are the only one responsible for your choices. And if unsolicited advice is already a burden, wait until we reflect on something even more complex: other people's expectations that often imprison us without us even realizing it. The dangerous gift of other people's expectations. Other people's expectations are like invisible chains that often bind us without us realizing it. From an early age, we are bombarded with expectations about how we should behave, what career to follow, when to marry, or even how to spend our money. However, these expectations are a reflection of other people's desires and fears, not ours. Epictetus teaches us that we cannot control what others expect from us, but we can control our response to these pressures, and it is in this control that we find our emotional freedom. Whether in the family environment or among friends, other people's expectations can weigh heavily. Who hasn't felt the pressure to live according to someone else's dreams? Often, without realizing it, we accept these expectations as absolute truths, leading us to stray from our true path. A common example is the family pressure to choose a certain profession. Perhaps you've always dreamed of being an artist, but your parents expect you to become a lawyer. Dealing with this dissonance requires the courage to set your own goals and priorities without carrying guilt that doesn't belong to you. The issue is that living under other people's expectations takes us away from our authenticity. We're so concerned with meeting other people's demands that we forget to ask ourselves, what do I really want? What makes sense to me? Marcus Aurelius said that while we try to please others, we end up betraying ourselves. To avoid this trap, it's crucial to develop healthy boundaries, recognizing that external approval is volatile, but your peace of mind is non-negotiable. True personal growth comes when we start living according to our own values. A practical example of how to deal with other people's expectations is financial planning. Many times, we feel the pressure to live a certain lifestyle that doesn't align with our priorities, just to satisfy what others expect of us. If your goal is financial security, but the world around you expects you to spend without limits, it's time to reconsider who you're trying to please. Developing a financial plan that aligns with your dreams and goals is a way to practice self-preservation and avoid the traps of unfair comparisons. Emotional freedom comes when we learn to let go of these expectations. When we start prioritizing our own desires, feelings, and goals, a great weight is lifted from our shoulders. This gives us the clarity to see what truly matters on our personal growth journey. As Epictetus teaches us, our responsibility is with our own development, not with the desire to meet what others expect of us. And when we free ourselves from other people's expectations, we make room for a state of mental peace and authenticity. However, it's not always easy to keep this space free, especially when we're surrounded by something even more harmful: constant negativity. Constant negativity. Constant negativity is like a storm that slowly destroys your mental garden. Some people seem to carry this dark cloud with them, always ready to point out what's wrong without offering real solutions. The danger here is that over time, this negativity can contaminate your own worldview. Marcus Aurelius, always wise, said that we have the power to choose how we react to adversity and other people's negativity. After all, personal control over our emotions is one of the greatest forms of self-preservation. Have you ever noticed how being around negative people can drain your energy? Negativity is contagious, and if we don't set clear boundaries, we risk allowing this energy to deeply affect us. A simple example is that friend or co-worker who always complains about everything, whether it's life, work, or relationships. If you don't have a strong internal filter, these complaints start to take root in your own mind, affecting your emotional well-being. The first step is to recognize these influences and, when necessary, distance yourself to protect your peace of mind. Tending to your mental garden involves more than just warding off negativity. It's also about cultivating positive and constructive thoughts. Stoicism teaches us to be vigilant about what we allow into our minds, just as a gardener tends to their flowers, protecting them from weeds. A practical strategy for dealing with negative environments or people is to create moments of healthy isolation. For example, setting aside time for meditation, reading, or self-care practices like exercise can help restore your energy and maintain emotional balance. Toxic relationships in particular are major sources of negativity. Often, we feel trapped in these relationships out of guilt or fear of being alone, but it's important to remember that self-preservation must always come first. Marcus Aurelius teaches us that we don't need to carry the weight of other people's negative emotions. If someone is constantly draining your energy with complaints or pessimistic attitudes, it may be time to set healthy boundaries or even consider distancing yourself. When we let go of negativity, we create space for personal growth to flourish. Peace of mind can only be maintained if we're clear about what we allow into our lives. That's why it's important to surround yourself with people who inspire, motivate, and contribute positively to your journey. Additionally, it's crucial to cultivate self-confidence to handle situations that may try to pull you down. As Epictetus said, the key is to control what's inside us, not what happens around us. And by taking care of your energy and emotional health, you'll find that even in the midst of challenges, it's possible to maintain peace. However, many still fall into the trap of seeking quick fixes to deal with these situations. And that's the mirage we'll talk about next. The mirage of quick fixes. In an increasingly fast-paced world, it's common to be tempted by quick fixes that promise to solve all our problems in the blink of an eye. The temptation to seek an easy way out without effort or patience may seem appealing at first, but it rarely brings lasting results. Epictetus reminds us that true progress is made step by step with conscious effort. Quick fixes are like building a house on a fragile foundation. Sooner or later, everything collapses. What truly builds a solid life is continuous and disciplined work. In the search for easy answers, many fall into the trap of magic formulas. Take, for example, the financial market. How many times have you heard about miraculous investments that promise to multiply your money in no time? The promise may be tempting, but the risk is huge. Just like in personal development, sustainable financial growth requires financial planning, patience, and study. If you seek financial security, the best path is to learn about the subject, invest in an informed way, and resist the temptation of promises of immediate returns. The same principle applies to personal growth. Imagine someone who wants to improve their physical health, but opts for extreme diets or miracle pills that promise quick results. While there may be a temporary improvement, true well-being is only achieved with lasting habit changes, such as balanced eating and regular exercise. Similarly, to achieve emotional well-being, it's essential to invest in daily self-care practices, such as meditation, reading, or moments of social isolation that strengthen mental peace and resilience. Unfair comparisons are also fueled by quick fixes. Seeing someone else's success on the surface can lead us to seek shortcuts without realizing the time and effort that person dedicated to their progress. Seneca warns us that there's no hurry in true growth. Just like a tree takes years to bloom, our most important goals also need time to mature. Rushing is often the enemy of mental peace and personal control. Every advance should be celebrated without the pressure to speed up a process that by its nature requires patience. By rejecting the mirage of quick fixes, we learn to value the longer and truer path. Personal growth, self-confidence, and self-care are built with consistency, not shortcuts. True emotional control comes from realizing that even in the face of difficulties, it's the slow and steady progress that will bring significant results. Just like in Stoicism, mastery over our lives is achieved with discipline and continuous effort. Each day is a new opportunity to take a step forward, not in haste but with purpose. And as we progress on our journey, it's important to remember that the process of learning and evolving doesn't require unsolicited advice. This brings us to reflect on the prison that these opinions can create. The prison of unsolicited advice. Unsolicited advice may seem harmless at first glance, but in reality it often brings more confusion than clarity. They come without warning, without you asking for them, and often carry the perspective of the person offering them without considering what's best for you. Marcus Aurelius, with his Stoic wisdom, already warned that true wisdom lies within us, not in other people's opinions. Accepting every piece of advice without reflecting can cause us to lose personal control over our decisions. In the end, you are the only one responsible for your life. We've all been in situations where we felt bombarded by advice we didn't ask for. A common example is when you're in a period of change, like switching jobs or ending a relationship. Suddenly, everyone around you becomes an expert on your life, offering quick solutions and opinions that most of the time don't reflect your reality. When we absorb unsolicited advice, we risk stifling our own inner wisdom to the point that we start questioning what we already know is best for us. Setting healthy boundaries is crucial to protecting yourself from this overload of advice. When someone offers an unsolicited opinion, smile, thank them, and move on, keeping the certainty that the only opinion that truly matters is your own. This doesn't mean you should ignore advice completely, but rather learn to filter what really contributes to your personal growth. Just like in a toxic relationship where the other person's opinion tries to overshadow your own, it's important to remember that your voice should always be the loudest. A practical example of this is when it comes to financial security. Often, unsolicited advice about how to manage your money can lead you down paths that don't align with your goals. Maybe someone suggests you invest in something that doesn't make sense for your financial plan just because it worked for them. At that moment, it's essential to activate your internal filter, respecting your own limits and values. By doing so, you avoid falling into the trap of following directions that could compromise your emotional and financial well-being. Developing self-confidence is a powerful way to deal with this avalanche of opinions. When you're clear about your own values and goals, it becomes easier to distinguish what is useful from what is just noise. Marcus Aurelius said that inner peace comes when we trust our own wisdom, and this is something that's built over time. Allowing every unsolicited piece of advice to be just a suggestion and not a rule is a way to maintain personal control over your life. By learning to deal with unsolicited advice, you free yourself from the need to please everyone and, more importantly, from the burden of trying to follow directions that don't resonate with your own desires. But there's an even more subtle burden that we often carry without realizing it: guilt that doesn't belong to us. Guilt that doesn't belong to us. Carrying other people's guilt is like allowing weeds to grow in your mental garden. Often we accept guilt that doesn't belong to us, either out of fear of confrontation, a need to please, or to avoid conflict. Epictetus teaches us that it's not external events that disturb us, but the way we interpret them. When we take on guilt for other people's mistakes and failures, we lose the energy that could be used for our own growth. Self-preservation here means learning to identify what is truly our responsibility. How many times have you taken responsibility for something that was out of your control? Maybe it was at work, where the blame for a poorly executed project fell on you, even though the failure was someone else's, or in a relationship, when the other person's mistakes were projected onto you as if you were responsible for all the problems. This happens because often people don't want to face their own failures and find in us an easy target. When we learn to set healthy boundaries, we start rejecting guilt that doesn't belong to us. A practical way to deal with this situation is to always ask yourself, is this guilt really mine? If the answer is no, then you need to develop the ability to emotionally detach from the problem. Remember, your responsibility ends where the other person's begins. In the family environment, for example, parents often place the weight of their own frustrations on their children, creating a sense of guilt that follows them throughout their lives. Recognizing this is the first step to freeing yourself from this unnecessary emotional burden. Stoicism offers us a clear approach to dealing with these moments. Epictetus said that we should focus only on what is under our control. Therefore, when you realize that someone is trying to transfer guilt onto you, the best reaction is to maintain personal control over your emotions and not accept that responsibility. This not only protects your emotional well-being, but also helps strengthen your self-confidence. From the moment we stop carrying the weight of other people's mistakes, we become freer to invest in our own personal development. Unfair comparisons also connect to this feeling of guilt. When we compare ourselves to others and feel like we're falling behind, we may take on guilt that has no basis. Everyone has their own pace, and we shouldn't feel guilty for not following the same steps as those around us. The secret is to focus on your own journey without absorbing expectations and guilt that don't belong to you. Self-preservation is, above all, a daily exercise in freeing yourself from external pressures. By rejecting guilt that isn't yours, you open yourself up to a life of greater mental peace and emotional freedom. This allows you to focus on what really matters: your own progress. Now that we've gone through these 9 traps, there's something important to be said about how we can apply this knowledge to avoid it all happening again. If this content helped you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate notifications to keep learning about Stoicism, self-awareness, and personal growth. Let's go on this journey of evolution together.